Hello, and welcome to the Shine More podcast, where we are shining a light on all things special education with a passion to help those with special needs and a mission to empower individuals with various abilities. Today, we are focusing on behavior. Today, we have someone who has been a behavior tech for about, well, he's been a behavior tech for about, I think, 13 years. Now he's currently a teacher, but he has a wealth of knowledge and experience with students with various behavioral needs and those of students who have cognitive disabilities, students who may be nonverbal, students who may have autism or intellectual disabilities. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Robinson. Something else I did not mention, he's also has experience with behavioral needs in a group home setting. So I think that's another side of it that a lot of parents sometimes wonder about as well. So I just want to ask you a few questions regarding behavior. I think that especially behavior with the type of population that you typically work with, the students that may be more severe when it comes to cognitive abilities and in a center setting. When it comes to strategies, whether that's the positive behavior intervention plan that you're using, or even strategies that you've just learned, this is what works best for that student. Where do you start? Where do you begin when you're trying to um, uh, decrease a behavior or just kind of hopefully get that behavior to fade?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me today. Like you said, I've been working in the field actually like 14 years
Okay.
in total. But first of all, when you're dealing with individuals with profound behaviors or disabilities, speaking on behavior, first you want to find the function of a behavior. First, you have to know the individual.
Right.
So know the individual. That's first. Knowing the individual can tell you a lot about a possible function, and the function is why the behavior is occurring pretty much. There's different types of functions for behaviors. Sometimes it can be a communication issue. An individual may be trying to communicate something. We have individuals that are nonverbal. Some that can kind of talk more, but has some like an IND type disorder where they intellectually, they're not good at expressing themselves as well. So behaviors can come in many forms, but most of the functions is pretty much to communicate something, to get something, attain something, or to get out of something, even
Okay.
to kind of avoid doing something or avoid a specific person. So first you want to know the individual, because knowing the individual, you would learn patterns and just learning things about the needs and wants of the individual, even if it's harder for them to more so communicate their wants and needs. So you'll have an idea, about, what they're trying to obtain or trying to even just tell you. So knowing the function of a behavior is very important, and that just comes with just knowing the individuals that you serve.
Okay, so starting off by observing the student and or that individual and just seeing why they're behaving in this manner, why they may be responding this way. Okay. And you mentioned communication, and I've definitely seen that where sometimes they may just be frustrated. They may not be able to communicate whatever it may be over to that person. How have you kind of tied that in with working with a child that may be having a behavior? If you know that there's also a communication, a communication concern rather? Do you implement their communication devices? Do you implement their visuals? Like, what do you do when you know that right now it could be truly just an issue with communicating?
Okay, so individuals have specific needs as far as communication. Some can communicate certain things, but we have individuals that really need assistance, which we call assistive technology. And those can range from high techs like iPads that have different icons, like multiple icons and different subheadings for everything they need, as far as communication, and it's paired with pictures. So depending on the need of that individual, I try to always have what's more so necessary, whether it's just picture icons, just on a little ring that the main issues or the main things that the kid try to communicate normally. So it varies on individual, but you want to have some type of form of communication, whether like I said, it's picture icons, it can be assistive technology, it can be little switches where you just press a button and it tells you. So it's just based on each individual, but having the technology or whatever type of communication system that's necessary for each individual is a must that you have, because again, if you don't know the individual as much, it'll be difficult for you to kind of understand, or maybe behaviors start to happen because the individual is trying to communicate something and you don't understand what they're communicating. At one point early on in the field, I used to react to everything an individual do. Like soon as they move, soon as they do this, I'm jumping out, I'm panicking. So I had to learn at some point to just relax a little bit, because part of that was communication. Maybe a kid will go over and touch something, or show you something, and I started sitting back like, well, let me see what this individual gonna do. And I end up learning a lot from those situations, just taking some time to say, okay, well, let me just be patient and wait. And you'll be amazed like how much you can learn by, just sitting back, because that's a form of communication. It's like some individuals will go point, gesture, and they will show you exactly what they was trying to communicate, or just something that they, desired at that particular time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, I think it's very important, whatever that mode of communication is, whether that's a device, like you mentioned, whether that's visuals, that they have it with them as much as possible. Because I know sometimes the student may transition, say they're going from class to specials, make sure they have that device with them, or the visuals are with them, or if they're going on a field trip, whatever the case may be, because I think, like you said, it's so important for them to be able to have their voice, so they can kind of be able to express themselves. So, if they don't have the actual words, they use the means of that device to have a voice. So I think that's always important to keep it with them as much as possible, because I think that sometimes can also kind of maybe decrease some behaviors too. When you're transitioning different locations, you're going to a different, now maybe they're on a CBI, community-based instruction trip somewhere, or they're in another classroom. Just make sure to always take it with them, so they have that with them.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how important is it to be consistent when it comes to implementing whatever strategies you may be trying to implement, and across settings? What would you share about that?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not an expert when it comes to certain parts of the ESE field, or people with certain disabilities. But what I do know, working with individuals with disabilities, it's all about consistency. All about consistency. Everything you do, you need to be consistent doing whatever that's in place. And consistency helps shape the behaviors that we ultimately look for in individuals, the acceptable behaviors, the more positive behaviors that we look for. Being consistent helps shape those behaviors. For instance, if we have some type of behavior system in for a particular student, maybe it's a token board where it has a section where 5 thumbs up can go on, and they Velcroed. So each time a kid exhibit the appropriate behavior, they give themselves a thumbs up, and they may be working for some particular thing. I am working for this at the top, and the thumbs up is at the bottom. So being consistent with that, when a individual know what the outcome of them exhibiting that positive behavior going to get them, most likely that behavior will increase, because they working towards something. They working to attain something. They understand that if I exhibit this behavior, I'll get this. So it's all about being consistent. The problem that I've seen in the past with the consistency, more so me working at a setting as far as a school or a group home, is the consistency from at home as well. So whatever is going on at home, the consistency need to fall over to school and vice versa. So you get times where just say a new person come around and they're not familiar with what's been implemented. So, that can kind of set a kid off and cause a behavior. So that comes with communication amongst the adults or whoever we're going to be working with the individuals. But consistency, I think, is the key to kind of help kind of facilitate behaviors and more so get the positive behaviors that we look for with individuals. So another thing about consistency I noticed with the individuals is routine. So people with disabilities or profound disabilities, they learn well with consistency. And they when something changes, it doesn't sit well with them. Part of the disability, or most of the individuals I work with as like ASD, it's the autism spectrum disability. So a lot of those individuals not prone to like change stuff that change a lot. So consistency, things need to stay the same. They look forward to, doing this particular task or transition this certain way or taking even a certain route to transition to go to another place. So all of that stuff, it matters when it comes to consistency. And the more consistent you are with the individuals, the more positive results you will see, pretty much the results that you're looking for out of that individual as far as the positive behavior. So consistency, I personally feel, is the biggest key to dealing with individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned something earlier about observing that person, finding out what's the function. And I just thought about it. We didn't touch on also finding out what motivates that person, what motivates that student. Talk a little bit about that, about not only finding out that function, but also finding out about what would be that reward, especially when it comes to a nonverbal student, because students who are verbal, they can tell us, we can do a little checklist and find out what do they like, what they don't like. How do you find out what motivates or encourages a student that may not be able to verbally tell you that?
Right. Okay. So that's a great question. So again, for me, going back into what I mentioned about when we first started off, it's really knowing the individual. Just knowing the individuals that you work with, because the individual, they will show you eventually what they like and what they don't like. And whether it's a particular person, maybe an individual like to get high fives or verbal praise or smiles. So I typically just go throughout the day and talk to each kid, dialogue with each kid, and just go through the motions. And kids will actually show you whether it's a certain item. I mean, I have a break area in the class where the kids can go and play. So it's maybe a set of books or blocks or something. So the individual may go and pick up the block. So I noticed over a period of time, this individual always go and pick up the block. So obviously this individual like playing with the block. So I kind of use that as a reinforcer or some type of edibles. I try to keep edibles because our students love edibles. So
explain what edibles are, so that if someone may not know.
Right, absolutely. So edibles can come in the form of gummies, chips, just something that, just like you and I eat, just any type of edible, any type of food item, pretty much is an edible. And drinks can be included in that as well. A lot of our kids love cookies, Skittles, gummies, chips. It just varies based on the kid. So we try to keep a variety of options, and I tend to ask the kid what option they would like, or just if it's a nonverbal student, I would just sit a couple of choices in front of them and they'll point to the item that they like. So again, it's pretty much just knowing the individual, just knowing your individual, just being observant, because the individual will always show you eventually they likes and they don't like. So just knowing the individual.
Right. Okay. Now, how do you work when it comes to the data collection? And I mention that because we know how important that is to see progress, or maybe they're not having progress, because we can observe, we can see, okay, he doesn't like this or she does like this, but what is kind of, I guess, what is your, what do you find that works best for you in your classroom or just in your experience? Because we know that everything is data driven. We have to be able to back up what we're saying by looking at the data and seeing what really is working and what's not working. What do you find to be best practice for you when it comes to that?
Okay, so different individuals exhibit different behaviors. So
Mhm.
some individuals have specific behaviors that I more so track, whether that's physical aggression towards others, self-injurious behavior as far as them hitting themselves, pinching themselves, biting themselves, or whatever. So throughout the day, anytime a kid get frustrated, maybe they yell, they may have a target behavior. They like to yell, scream,
Mhm.
throw items, or whatever that may be. So I use a system, a tally sheet system,
Mhm.
and it's throughout the day. If a behavior occurred at a particular time, it's by time and date. I'll check that box, and if a behavior did occur, just say it was a self-interest behavior. A student pinched themselves for whatever reason. Um, I'll check the tally mark, and I will do what we call an ABC sheet to go along with that. So the ABC sheet tells the antecedent, which just means what happened right before that kid exhibited the behavior, which would have been pinching. Maybe the kid was denied a preferred item. Maybe
Mhm.
the kid was trying to communicate something, and it wasn't the message wasn't received, from that individual that the student was trying to communicate the message to. So the behavior, obviously, the B is what the behavior actually was. In this case, it had been pinching, and consequences, what happened immediately after the behavior. Did the staff member or myself um, give a verbal redirection to the kid? That whatever happened after that? So that's the consequence. So what that allows me to do is track what happened during that period of time and any other day. So maybe tomorrow the behavior occurs, but it occurred later in the day. Maybe the first behavior the day before maybe happened maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. The
Mhm.
next behavior the next day maybe occurred 1, but we always track the behaviors. That way we can see patterns. Maybe it always happened at 10 o'clock in the morning. So we'll
Right.
know, okay, so at 10, we're following a specific schedule. So right now we do math at 10. So maybe the student doesn't like math.
Mhm.
So when it's time for math, the student pinches him or herself. So data is good at data is best used to find patterns of the functions of behavior, which
Mhm.
is why behavior would occur. So with the data, it would allow me to go back and track and see why, maybe why that behavior is even occurring. So that's the form of data that I use, and it works well. Like I said, to let me know the patterns of maybe
Mhm.
proactive strategies that need to be in place for that particular time or day for that student.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I wanted to just give that brief overview of behaviors and specifically with the target population of those individuals that may be nonverbal, maybe a bit more profound when it comes to their different behaviors and just their abilities. So, is there anything else that you would like to share that you can think of that might be helpful?
Again, I mentioned this again, and I just feel from my personal experience, what's most important when dealing with individuals with profound disabilities, behavior issues, you just have to know the individual. It's
Yeah.
just like you and I, or a family member, a close friend. You really have to know the people you're around. When you know the individuals, it's easier to deal with them and to help them with whatever issues they may have, even though they can't communicate certain things. So
Hmm.
just knowing them, it will help out a lot, and just the consistency of what actually works.
Right.
At times we will try different things and put things in place that won't work at times, just like
Hmm.
preferred items or reinforcers for an individual. If I may be a person that likes Skittles today, but next week I may want
Right.
M&M. So you just want to always find a consistency to know the individual, and that's just paying attention to the individual, and just being consistent, pretty much consistent all around. You have to try to put systems in place that not only work for you, that can work for somebody else that also works with the kid, because you have some people that can just come and give a verbal directive to a person and they follow
Right.
along with the directive. Then you have some come to try to get a directive and the individual is just looking at them and they have
Right.
to try something else. So whatever it may be, you want to just stay consistent, and everybody should be able to use the same systems for every individual they serve or work with. So again, just being consistent with everything you do, and just most of all, just knowing the individuals you work with, because again, the individuals themselves, they will tell you a lot about them, because it's them
Right.
they're the ones who's advocating for themselves in whatever way they can, but they will show you their likes and they don't, the things that they don't like. So just knowing the individuals again.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Robinson. And thank you so much. We'll see you all soon.
All right, thanks for having me.